thank you everyone for being part of this roundtable discussion. You are collectively some of my favorite people in the creative industry in Saudi Arabia. So I am internally geeking out معاكم. So thank you so much for being a true force of change in Saudi Arabia, whether behind the scenes or in front of it. You have been part of the change of the creative industry that we've all been looking for. To kick off this session, I'll do kind of an informal introduction about myself for anybody who doesn't know me. My name is Basma Bouzo, and I'm one half of the founders and directors of Saudi Design Week, which is an annual design festival celebrating everything design in Saudi Arabia. I'm also 1/3 of a creative studio called Buku, which works on PR, strategy, communication, curation, procurement, and storytelling. I am personally very passionate about creating platforms for creatives in general and Saudis in particular. And today's topic, we're going to talk about creative spaces and creative initiatives in Saudi Arabia, which have emerged of late. And they are incubators, accelerators, centers of excellence and innovation. They are the true powerful purpose behind new ways of thinking and developing all of these great talents that are coming up. So I wanted to ask a few questions and kind of get your thoughts on this emerging scene and paradigm and what the different entities are doing and been up to. So I'll start off our session with a quick question about the creative past, since you are all part of the creative future. I'd love to know more about your creative past and what compelled you to be part of the creative future. So if you can tell me your name, what or who you represent, and why you're part of the creative future. So I'm going to do this alphabetically so we don't get lost. Alaa Balkhy, we'll start with you. I think we don't have audio.
My name is Alaa Balkhy. I'm a creative entrepreneur based in Jeddah. And I think the reason why we feel is we've seen the industry change and we've seen it grow, and there was so much that was happening from social media to the digital space and to just entrepreneurship and homegrown brands. When I was studying graphic design, basically the goal after you graduate was an advertising agency, and that was in 2011, and that was it. And I think for us, we create spaces that we needed when we were in school or when we just graduated. We create those spaces that were missing back then, and that's what you see now. I think collectively, as a creative industry in Saudi, we didn't have it, and we collectively created it over a span of 10 years. And I think now we're seeing it thrive, finally.
Alaa Ghanimah.
Hi, my name is Alaa Ghanimah, and I am a creative leader in the field of creative culture development. I'm co-founder of المشتل, which is an initiative by Rukn Creative Exchange. And our why is pretty much, my partner and I, Noura, found a lot of challenges that were constantly reoccurring in our environments. As creatives, we always claimed our spaces, but they were more unorganized, underground, and really individual or select collective efforts to create these environments where you can be yourself and be creative. However, we saw that one of the biggest challenges was that we don't have access to these spaces. And that's from there, we decided, okay, we really need to find a model where we can support with building a creative ecosystem that can very much bust the myth of you cannot have a sustainable career being a creative. And this is where our concept emerged from.
Great. Moath?
I agree with Alaa. My name is Moath Alofi. I explore a lot. I've been away from the kingdom for like 10 years. And then when I got back, I really noticed that there are some places where you can exhibit. There are some places where you can really express yourself. 7 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, with Athar Gallery and many other galleries that I didn't ever knew about. And I found that if I put more energy into what I'm doing and learn maybe better and organize my data and my outcomes, then I could really do something with it. And that basically what happened. I learned from my friends, my colleagues, and then after like 2 years of practicing this in the field, I got appointed to be the head of the initiative called Medina Munawwara Art Initiative. And then this initiative grew up to be the Medina Art Center, which I'm running recently, or the past maybe 3 years now. To be another creative space for the people who didn't really got the access or got the chance to exhibit or knew about the field of art in Saudi Arabia and in the world in general. So yeah, basically this is it.
Great. Na'ma?
Hi. And thank you, Basma, for inviting me. My name is Neama AlSudairy. I am the founding director of Lakum Art Space, and before that, Alaa Art Space. I'm also a board member, Misk Art Institute. And I've been just part of the art scene for the past 10 years in different capacities as an artist, as a gallerist, and just as an art lover in general. And how it started when I first moved back, when I graduated and I first moved back to Riyadh, I spent the first 2-3 years, just working on my own art and developing my own thing. I even remember being invited by you, Basma and Noura, to a group show, I think in 2009 or 2010. And I still remember how that experience made me feel. I met a lot of really interesting people. I had great conversations, and just attending more of those kind of events made me realize, and we really needed that kind of space, a hub that gathers all these creatives and all those minds. And I started to seriously think about it back then. And then I was like, why wait for someone else to start such a project? Why not start it myself? So I gathered a team, and we helped me with the strategy. And we started to look at the market, and we realized that there is a huge gap between museums and private galleries. And we wanted to fill that space with a project or a space that not only not only designs curated exhibitions, but also has a mission to give back to the community with education programs and all of that. So that's how the whole idea of الآن basically started. And then now الآن أصبح لكم.
Raneen?
Hello everyone, good morning. Coming to you from LA, I'm Raneen Bukhari. I echo all of my peers' comments. I grew up my life was a little bit different. I grew up in a very creative home and in a very creative space called Desert Designs in El Khobar. And in 2009, we founded Desert Designs Art Gallery, in which it became an art space, but it also became a community space where we would host artists from the area and sometimes from the region. And we would give them the space to express themselves and to showcase their art and to gather. And so it became a little oasis in Khobar for us to just meet each other and to network. And that allowed me in 2012 to pursue a career in curating. So since 2012, I've been a curator for emerging artists in contemporary Saudi art. We've done a few shows, Loud Art, Basma Alaa, Moath, you've all been a part of it.
Yes, we started with Laudat. It was one of these good steps that I have done in the art scene. Thank you, Raneen.
And since then, it's been a journey, and I'm so excited over the past few years, more recently, about what's been happening in the scene and how we're all growing because of it.
Great. Rahul?
Thank you, Basma, and also thank you to Mesk for inviting me. In a way, I suppose I'm also an outlier because not only do I sort of represent an institution, I'm also not from Saudi and haven't sort of had the opportunity to spend as much time in Saudi. But I'm really looking forward to engage with the context, and in a way, I'm representing the work and the intentions that the colleagues bring to the context. One of the things that was important for me when I was thinking more and more together with colleagues about the new space that we're working towards that's due to open next year in Saudi, it was in a way to think through how Art Jamil has had this long-standing relationship with the deep past in a way, and also sort of contemporary times. So our work in the past has connected, to the Balad, as well as with documenting, let's say, historical sites like Al-Ula, and then now more recently, let's say, with the Jeddah Sculpture Park, and then now into sort of contemporary art practices. So in a way, linking that more and more towards transdisciplinary sort of research spaces was the vision that we were kind of more drawn towards for High. That's again also a little bit where I come from, and that's my personal background, which is working more and more towards community-based practices, working with transdisciplinary practices, bringing together people from different disciplines, and having these opportunities for people to learn through formal and informal modes, in a way, and that's what our vision is also for the High.
Great. Wadha?
Thank you, Basma, and I'm very honored to be amongst these creative individuals. So I'm Wadha Nafjan, Head of Creativity and Innovation at ITHRA, which manages ITHRA's Idea Lab and Tanween. So ITHRA was established as a response to the changing context of Saudi's aspirations. It was at the point where Aramco was kind of transitioning from just building infrastructure to focusing on people, and we perfectly aligned with Vision 2030 later on. We are a multidisciplinary cultural center that focuses on creativity, art, whether it was visual or performing, knowledge, culture, and of course the community. I think where we exist is being in an area where we serve three main focus areas. We build the creative sector and talent through learning and education. We enable content creation and promote that content. And we also provide public engagement channels to kind of advance or elevate the public's experience. We kind of try to ensure that through cultural and creative content, the public can then experience creative content by going to a museum, buying art, seeing a show, reading a book at our library. And we have that community as kind of a central focus to our mission.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so we currently live obviously in a post-COVID world, and this is something that everyone has really had to adapt to. But even on a larger context, if we look at all of these different creative initiatives or creative spaces and think about sustainability long-term, what considerations do you have when you're building these creative initiatives? And how do you ensure that you are responsive to the needs of the time of the generation that you are catering to? So I'll direct this to Na'ma first, because I know you have been working on this for a little bit. Then guys, feel free to jump in if you have any answers to this.
Sorry, Basma, it was cutting. I could not hear the question. Can you repeat it again?
Yeah, so I was saying for these creative spaces and initiatives, how do you ensure that it's responsive to the needs of the time, and how do you ensure that it's sustainable long term?
Oh, okay. I think, in my opinion, I don't think there's one model for a creative space. I think creative spaces differ and change from city to city, from time to time even. And I think the best way to ensure that you're responding to the needs is to be flexible. We're not a museum. At the end of the day, we can't be as rigid or as controlled. You know, we need to be aware and realize what the needs of the community are and adapt with time to that. I think just being flexible. I think that's the best way I can answer that.
Great. Rahul, Wadha, as bigger institutions, do you feel a struggle dealing with, you know, a hybrid world, a virtual world, you know, or do you feel that the community kind of comes together in this kind of era?
I really do think it comes together in a way, and in a way it's sort of not just us. I think collectively the entire ecosystem has to think and be more thoughtful. And I think there's some things that we will learn that are desired for the future in many ways. So exhibition making itself has a large footprint. So for us, for instance, we've had to go through and have a look, and we're going to have longer programs, sort of engage with the community for longer durations in a way. But also one of the good things that have happened with digital that we're able to immediately connect with people at quite far away from each other. So we ran, for instance, what was initially supposed to be a shorter Kyoto fellowship program, which then adapted as a result of the pandemic into almost a year-long program, which of course had its shortfalls, but also had a lot of pluses. The shortfalls, of course, was that we didn't have the intimacy of being able to learn next to each other. So we had fellows Abdullah Al-Mutayri, Wajdan Reda, Tara Al-Dugatar, who were a part of the fellowship with really compelling and lovely sort of research projects. And what we were able to offer in a way were digital resources to the extent possible, with access to visitors from different parts of the world, even, let's say, visitors that would otherwise have been in the region and would have been easy to sort of travel, were themselves stuck in different parts of the world. So in a way, the digital world really did sort of allow us to create these networks and communities and spaces for learning. And also a lot of sort of platforms that allowed for shared learning that emerged in a way. And we've taken sort of notes from those also. And in terms of programs, etc., I think it also really helps because it in a way redefines the notion of the grassroots. Because what you see, which is the individual, the collective, almost immediately what we saw was work being produced by individuals, collectives, and smaller institutions that they cared about, that mattered to them. And in a way, they were able to center themselves as a result of the digital shift and allowed us to sort of learn from them, irrespective of whether we were working in smaller or larger institutions.
I agree with Rahul. I think it also helped us and other institutes be more dynamic, adaptable to change, accelerated our digitization. If you see now in Misc Art Week, here we are online, and I think these kind of hybrid experiences were a great chance to reach the wider audience and create unique experiences that we never thought we would be able to do before.
Great, thank you. Okay, so obviously now, you know, with the diversity of these creative initiatives and creative spaces, there are different models or business models that operate all of these different initiatives. And do you feel that the expectations of the audience towards a grassroots initiative vary to that of a larger corporation or a CSR project? And is there room for, you know, for us to complement each other, for the larger corporations to adopt some of the smaller ones and still, but keep their unique voices alive in these kind of things?
If I can answer, I think if you look at the market at large, you need those different business models to serve different objectives, different goals, and even address different needs. for us, for example, we believe that our role is to develop that ecosystem. We have the power of patronage, us and other governmental institutes. We help by buying creative content. If that content is not available, we then develop the talent to reach to that ultimate goal.
I definitely agree with Wadha. There are many ways. Obviously, our models are completely different. We don't have the same resources and financial means, but there are many ways for us to collaborate and work on things. I think, I've seen it happen, and I'm sure it's going to happen even more in the future with all these new projects popping up. I think there are definitely ways for us to work together.
I think there's.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think there's definitely a difference in expectation when it comes to grassroots or larger corporations. I mean, grassroots don't have the comfort of being supported by larger corporations. They don't have the comfort of the access to different resources and access to different funding and financing solutions. And that being said, I think the different roles are definitely there because there are different skills. And if you think different roles plus different skills, that creates breakthrough. But I think for us as, for instance, as an initiative that's just about to start its physical space, it's really a situation where it's like, how can you ensure that these different models are complementing each other rather than competing against each other or doing one another's roles, you know? So you have opportunities for larger corporations to support these grassroots and support their initiatives rather than, for instance, create the initiatives and then having the grassroots initiatives being lost in the clutter or in the size of it all, you know. I think it's really important when thinking about different business models is how can these different models complement one another, because the market as a whole is one unit, it's one piece, and you have different roles in this market that need to play off of each other rather than take from one another.
Yeah, I think you said that very elegantly, Alaa. I want to echo what you said and just say that, especially because of 2020, it's kind of almost imperative for larger corporations and institutions and entities to support the grassroots and the smaller artistic endeavors that are happening in the area. So, yeah.
I agree too. I think it is a creative ecosystem, and I think what happened when everything started to become digital, it leveled the playing field of like someone from a smaller from a smaller like creative system can create something that is the same. If you have the resources of going digital, you don't need the funds of having a space or all of these things that go with like a bigger entity when you're creating something like a forum.
And we have Angawi joining us. So hi, Ahmed. We're going to incorporate you in a bit. Yeah, go ahead. Somebody was talking.
I just wanted to add and echo what had already been said. In a way, I think there's definitely certain roles that we turn to for galleries, institutions, government bodies, and entities to sort of, in a way, offer to the community. It would be really helpful, for instance, if there was more support, more grant-making initiatives that would allow for individuals, individual practices to develop and be nurtured. That would be really productive in a way to sort of to work towards a long-term ecosystem and in a way sort of establish just long-term practices.
Yeah, and I think this takes me sort of to another question, which is, with all of this and the ecosystem and it kind of all has to fit well together, what do you believe is the role of government or government initiatives towards the creative ecosystem, in particular to both creative spaces and creative initiatives, because I think, you know, it's quite a broad scale. So what do we think about the role, or what should the ultimate role of government be? Is it funding? Is it regulatory? Is it a bit of both if we want it to be? So, Alaa,
I think it's everything. I think it is funding, it is regulations, it is education. As someone that started a brand in 2011, it was really hard to produce, for example. It was something very new. There was still stigma about producing locally. And I think now the conversation has changed, but still 10 years later, we don't have a lot of factories that produce here. When it comes to fashion, we don't have studios that you can rent out that are commercial studios, that are not for big, large, like TV ads, but are for like medium-sized companies. So I think it's like a bit of everything, and it's happening. I just want to see more of it.
I think what we need right now from the government is to just trust the entities that have been working in the spaces, and to relinquish some of their power over and control over these spaces, and what we can produce and what we can put out there for the community, because we know right now what the community wants, what they need, and what our boundaries are. And so I think that would help a lot, more than regulatory, more than even funding, is to just allow people to express and to create and to host without multiple channels in which it has to go through before we can release something. Of course, funding is amazing and I'd love for that, but just as a previous step, just before you create grants or you create that kind of, which requires a lot of work, I think that would be a great first step.
If I may just add to this point, I think it has to be said that the government in the field of creative economy has definitely grown a lot over the past few years, you know. For the outliers here with us on the group, they know like 10 years ago, there was no entity you can get any sort of licensing from about anything. So just that being available today is, I think, needs to be you know, taken into consideration and appreciated. And I think usually this question, it's constantly being asked, but more importantly, it's not really about the financing or the regulations. There are a lot of regulations that are supporting SMEs, especially creative SMEs and whatnot. But as to Alaa's point earlier, you know, the ecosystem is missing a lot of integral elements in it, you know. I think that being said, it's not about duplicating efforts. So you have a lot of creative entities that are available today running programs that can be supported from the government by grants and funds and sponsorships, instead of the government creating their own programs, you know, or creating their own funds. I think in terms of regulations, we play a huge role in this, because as creative spaces and as creative entities and organizations, we're on the ground. We're like the eyes and ears, and we're the ones who are listening, feeling the pain, engaging with the audience. So I think there's also a role in it for us to be able to communicate, you know, whether it was in terms of councils that we create and say, okay, you know, like we've self-developed and self-organized this council, and we would like to put forward, you know, these certain points or whatnot. I just wanted to highlight it's more of a two-way road, you know.
I want to add just a few things. I echo what everyone's been saying. I think it is a little bit of everything. I think rules and regulations, when we say simplifying the process of permits and all of those kind of things, because our business models are different and they are new, and realizing that there are these kind of spaces that exist. I think a little bit of work and that, because I've I've opened Alaa 10 years ago, and I know we went through a lot just figuring out all the paperwork, and that takes a lot of time and energy. The other thing is, as I think Raneen was saying, that let them trust us and not compete with us, because we can't compete with the government. We need a little bit of space. We need them to trust that we can do what we're here to do and what we really love doing, and we've been doing for so long. And also realizing, maybe not funding, but just, working with us, hiring us, respecting the artists that we work with. And if they want to hire an artist, come through the galleries rather than directly contact the artist. Like, just as Alaa was saying, just look at the ecosystem and try to understand how everything links together and how we can all support each other for the bigger picture, basically.
I always say we're in this together. Yani we saw things change. We created it together. It's a collective effort, and we all know. Yani seeing all of your faces, I know our stories, and they're kind of similar when we're talking about how we started, and when we talk about it now, it's like al-madi.
I would just like to comment on a point that Alaa made also earlier, is that we started doing art shows in 2009, and the community was tiny in Khobar. Like, it was so small that it was kind of a piece of cake to get licenses back then. Like, it was really easy for us to do art shows. And I guess now with highlighting art and creating these spaces, it's getting a little bit more confusing, I think, in our time. So I'm excited for all of these regulations to come into effect and all this help and all this assistance. And I can't wait to see where it goes.
I also...
إذا تسمحوا لي, the speed sometimes is scary, Raneen. We thought COVID will slow everything down a bit, and now things are just rocketing, like doubling the speed or the rhythm that it was going on. So this is another thing to add through this. I know everyone is doing his own, like when you guys talking about regulations and government and everything, I'm like, yeah, I'm chilled. Everything is fine. I need no permits. I'm all good, but yes, I can feel that some of you might really go through some difficulties that I don't really have at some stages, because the Medina Art Center runs directly through the government, or like the municipality in a sense, and Medina authority. So it's all good. We have some ease, but also there is other things that I'm facing, which is finance. Sometimes finance can affect me, and going through the government might affect you more than actually helping you. There might be cuts. There might be other, if you are not totally secured through the MOC, you will be maybe in a different stage where other government panels might not see your KPIs, something that is really good for them, or something that is in the core of their businesses or their mission. So yeah.
I
think that's one of the challenges. Because the creative segment is so huge, it's so very diverse, So maybe some people have challenges in regulations and others don't.
I just wanted to add to everything else that was said, that another thing that the government could really offer is also create opportunities for learning and support learning opportunities for artists. A lot of work is already being done, as has already been mentioned, through grassroots efforts or larger private entities, etc. It'd be great for the government to sort of support these different practices as well. Yeah, and even private entities have also sort of worked towards grant-making efforts. And there have been times, for instance, where the government has come in to support. And I think it would be great to see more and more of that also.
I agree with you, Rahul. I think it's coming, though. With everything that's been happening and with the ministry and their efforts, I think it's coming. It's just a matter of time, which is a good news.
Well, you're the closest to government we have on this panel. I don't know if you want to have a few words on this, or we move on.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with everyone. And the role of government or us as a semi-government entity is providing a safe space for these organizations or individuals to create and experiment. Dealing with permits and all of that is not something the creative individuals should be busy doing. So we need to ensure that people get access to knowledge, as Rahul said, resources, develop and grow. We've done a few good examples, but yeah, that's definitely our main role.
Great. And just to kind of shift perspectives a little bit, Tim Brown from IDO has famously said that, more good ideas die because they fail to navigate the waters of an organization rather than the market itself rejecting them. So there is the notion of, creating equal outcomes over equal access. And I think that idea is quite interesting. And I wanted to talk more with Alaa Balkhy because you've created the creative directory. And I feel that speaks directly to, giving that access to people or giving that equal outcomes opportunity to creatives that wouldn't have had the opportunity to speak directly to bigger entities or projects. So I wanted to see kind of your thoughts on it and how you created the creative directory or how you started with that.
I think what happened is, I feel for someone living between Jeddah and New York, I think when COVID happened, it kind of, everyone was going through the same experience and everyone was online. And we were all there collectively, like the creative space that was in Saudi merged with the creative spaces in other cities, countries and cities. So it just started with a Google sheet that people were just adding their names and what they do and their Instagram handles. And the directory itself was I think it was a floating idea because a lot of people were talking about, even Al-Mashtal has a directory as well. I think it was a thing that was floating around of how can we find each other? How can we find the creative industry that is not necessarily around us in a physical space? And how can we work together? I want to meet people that are doing the exact same thing that I'm doing in another city. I want to learn from them. I want to understand what are their struggles. How are they succeeding? How are they doing things differently? And I think it was just bound to happen. We have to know each other. We have to know who's doing what. We have to do the work. We can't just be like, using the same people over and over again when it comes to certain projects. Otherwise, you're not gonna get different outcomes. You're not gonna get new things. You're just gonna keep doing the same old thing over and over again until it's boring to you and to people around you and to the public. So we just have to find each other. We have to find each other in these spaces and look for each other in other spaces that are not necessarily our friends. Working with your friends is really cool, but we have to expand that.
I don't know, Raneen, I think like you talk a lot about like these kind of opportunities being important for even the younger generation coming up and representation as well. This has been talked about a lot. And I think, I'd love to know more from your insight or on how best to deal with this moving forward.
I mean, I echo what Alaa was saying. I think it's really important for us to diversify our network and who we're giving platform to. I think because we got so comfortable in our little bubble, we really became just an echo chamber of each other and just hyping each other up. And just going out of that and just reaching out to maybe creatives who don't have the resources that we had, and who don't have that kind of social skills of reaching out and bringing them in and giving them space and giving them platform and giving them opportunity. I think it's very important.
Okay. So
If I can just...
Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just one line sort of addition to sort of echo what was already said. In addition to sort of growing the engagement and the community, it'd also be great to sort of expand from creatives towards also communicating with the larger public, and in a way sort of engaging our programs with the larger public as well. We often sort of speak to ourselves with the sort of things that we produce, and it'd be really lovely if we're able to find ways to bring larger audiences into the work that we do, even to the extent of participation within the production.
I think Rahul brings up a really important point. When I first saw this question, it resonated with me a lot, prioritizing equal outcomes over equal access. I think we cannot, when it comes to the creative field, it's very, you often hear it being described as a lonely experience, or it's very mystic. There's a lot of mystery around the creative process, being a creative. There's the long-lasting joke of try explaining to your grandma what you do, you know, as a designer. So there's a lot of mystery around that. And I think the process being very mysterious and closed off for the longest time created this kind of imbalance in terms of, because there's a real difference between exposure and representation. You have people who are naturally extroverted and they can position themselves and they have the social skills and it's all natural to them. And you have people who are like incredible creatives, very driven, but lack this kind of element where they can put themselves out and present themselves. So I don't think we can ever promise equal outcomes, because it's really about the individual, right? And I think it's how this individual wants to take and benefit from this opportunity that they have. But equal access is something you can definitely promise. You know, you can say that everyone is allowed to have equal levels of access, and it's about your qualifications and your skills and your background, rather than about who you know, or what magazine cover you've been on, or being a socialite or whatnot. And I think this is really the issue. Building a creative community space, we hear a lot of people who are, of course, underground creatives. They don't even associate as a creative or as a designer, because to them the association is the socialite or the star that they're constantly looking at, and it's like, it's really intimidating. But guys, no, like, it's about having equal access. It's how you use it to position yourself and expose yourself with guidance or whatnot, I think, is the difference.
That's exactly what I was trying to say, Alaa. Thank you. Like, it was really exactly that, which was what we tried to do with Loud Art in 2012, which was to create an equal opportunity for everyone to participate. And then based on just how much effort you've put into the application process, you know, you get a chance. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a great artist, if you're just starting out, if you're just putting stuff on Instagram. Like, these are the kind of spaces that people need and platforms people need to just, you know, get the opportunity, I guess. Yeah.
I think I want to add to that, when we created the Arab Creative Directory, it was open, so anyone could add their information, whether they were just starting or whether they're a professional. And people were like, isn't it curated? How do you know who's good and who's not? And for me, it was more to give access to someone that is young and has an interest in photography, not necessarily someone that's a professional, but why are we not allowing them to also be on this space to be discovered? Either be someone's mentee or be someone's intern. If someone has an interest, even if they're not at the level that you want them to be at, then get them to that level, help them, support them, and not close the doors. What we need is open doors. And we need to open the doors that were never opened for us, that we literally broke through. We need to open them slowly. We're not breaking doors anymore.
Not too slowly, hopefully. Ahmed, I don't know if you can hear us, but Ahmed, you've been involved a lot in the community in Al-Balad and have worked on creating access. I don't know if you have words that you can share with us on this point.
Yes, thank you first of all to be here. Hello everybody, and very familiar faces. Glad to see everybody here. I'm glad to be part of this panel. Yes, صراحة from different levels. And I remember back we used to have a creative space in our own home. We have say Dar al-Makkiyah, which is our family culture house. We started during 2005 and 6, and we used to do a lot of gathering and discussions. And this is something runs in every, I think, city, which is al-majalis in that form. And majalis تعتبر forms of communication that people come together and share في المجتمعات المدنية. And I think that's really was important to have a space where people can gather. And I remember at that time it was more family initiatives, and we used to do a lot of talks and even performances and so forth. And then for those of you who know studios, a lot of the studios in Saudi, a lot of the artist studios became a cultural hub or places that people can gather. We're supporting one another, and even I remember the entrance when we used to do the open mic, like 10 riyals or 15 riyals for an entrance just to get in a break a balida or something. But in the same idea that it's a very comfortable space, and it was a chance for people to come, a platform to express themselves. And then the experience in Al-Balad, and I can speak from two experiences. The one of the Princess School, which is creating a school space where we do public engagement program. And that was supported to do a private investor, and Jamil was involved. Alhamdulillah, the bigger thing is happening with the government there in Al-Balad as well. But the people were seeking spaces like this and remotely doing it there. And there's something to add about the questions of how the government can be engaged with the private sector. I think there's a lot of ways to do that. One of them may be to find an already existing system, and just we need to enhance it. An example, the community centers that we have all over the neighborhood. I think sometimes accessibility is a big important thing. What we heard today in Mashallah Fina, you have the digital accessibility, which is easy for everybody at home, but the physical space for a creative space is very important. And what exists around us from community centers that was enhanced, and that there's spaces for each neighborhood. You never know in each neighborhood how many creatives are there, how many people with talent. And providing this network from each neighborhood around the kingdom, around the city, you have a huge network of people coming in. A lot of the people who used to come to our space struggled from parking or going to that space in Al-Balad and so forth. So if you have an intermediate space of, what do you call that, third concept space, that could be a creative space within the community, that will enhance it in many different levels. And each center can develop their own program. The government can help again for facilitating, regulating. I had the pleasure to work with them in Al-Balad and to do this Zawi 97 as a launching pad, and the receiving of it was important. But during the Corona times and how things are going, and we had to change a lot of in our ways. A lot of people are asking for online classes, online workshops, and this is something I think all of us need to cope with. But I think one thing is important is, I've been saying it a couple of times in many different panels, the engagement of the community centers, if we can enhance that, it can really and it makes echoes all over the cities and all over the kingdom. Imagine the database that can be created from each neighborhood and from somebody who can live next to you by providing a space for them to show. I think I've been hearing a lot of the great comments you've been saying. I don't want to add anything. Everything you're saying is almost to the point. Yeah, this is what I would have to say for now.
Great, thank you.
I think when you talked about space, Ahmed, it's so important because yes, we are going digital, and yes, we're having Zoom meetings, but I feel like studio spaces are creative spaces that every creative needs, whether a photographer, artist, a sculptor, a fashion designer, an illustrator. And the idea, like when you were just saying that the idea, I live in Rawda in Jeddah, and if we had a creative space in Rawda, for me, it would be magical. Yeah. To be able to meet people in my community, my neighbors, in the, like, my and to find also other creatives that not necessarily from my same school or my same circle, but from my neighborhood. So, and then that creates another discussion looking around us. What can we create here? What's missing? How can we enhance it? So I think that's a great point.
It will make a ripple effect. The concept of neighboring, it will really open up, like for example, the yard sale, the antique space to be sold, and how that we can upcycle, and it will really brings everything involved to one another. Yes, we have those important institutions that happen everywhere, but on the scale of the average person that I can just walk, or I can just go to that space, it will add a lot, I think, for the creative spaces as a concept to have, rather than to have. We've been hearing about this major great projects, an art district, a design district, but if you look at it from what exists right now, how can we just enhance what's in there? I think that's a very strong point to work on. It have to be
So Ahmed, to your point, actually, part of the biggest inspiration for El Mashtal was community centers in districts. So my partner and I were always fascinated by the concept of a community center and how this is not really very well integrated in our culture. I mean, as Alaa was saying, imagine if I can do it in my neighborhood. That is magical, you know. And it's like, and that's really the point. I feel like that's when there would be impact in creativity, because it's really accessible, it's infiltrated, it's become something that is within my reach. It's not intimidating. There was a question here that was posted regarding how can you make sure that these spaces are not intimidating, and how can you reach out to general society. I think there was this was, as we're launching now for Mashtal operations, this was one of the biggest things for us. Like, how can we build a creative community where people are not too intimidated to come in? Like they're not too intimidated thinking, oh, these people are professionals, they are already khalas there, they made it, when in reality it's not. And creativity is a growing circle. You're constantly going at making yourself better. There's so many things that require improvement from you in your creative process, and I think that's really essential. When it comes to online, I want to ask you guys something. Since you guys are all creative, sorry, just a random question. Did you find shifting towards online to be more challenging?
Well, I'm here in the middle of the desert, and it's a bit challenging.
Okay.
But it is more like flexible, like, it gives you opportunity, it gives you reach. It is really, I can do other things, and at the same time, I will not skip this meeting. I will not have to travel to Riyadh or anywhere else, and I really can listen to you guys or put something on this meeting. So it's really important to have.
I agree, and I think there's two side to this, and if you share, it have to be physical and you have to experience it. But I think there is a lot of people who have knowledge and potential of teaching. The shift to completely right now by asking from all over the world people to learn how to do geometry, for example. You don't have to really travel to go to a class. Now there's people who's really elderly, who's not really comfortable with using technology, adapted to that, and there's more access now for people to learn. So there's that side of it, but of course the other side, for me, it was very challenging. My background here, all the machinery that I got from Al-Balad, I had to move everything from the workshop that I had to Zawiya because of Corona time, so I had to have accessibility. And that really resonated in my mind. The whole goal of Zawiya is to open up in the all cities, like in all Jeddah, inshallah, and all different cities, districts, in the kingdom, inshallah, abroad, like in Khalili, Fas, just to reconnect the old cities back again with the concept of Mecca being the communication, the center of the heart of Islam, the art. So it made me really think, I don't have to really go to another neighborhood and really think how I can, but about my own neighborhood. And this is a real story that's happening around me. It's the real people here that I meet every day. Why don't I try to create something within my own community, rather than to do something there, reminisce. And that's important, of course, but daily when I go out and it's here. I really find this important that it can be pushed in that way. Sorry, I'm bringing that part again, but I hope it can happen.
I want to answer, but first of all, I want to say, Ahmed, I really like how you always focus on like the smallest circle and then want to see how that grow, you know, from your neighborhood to your city to, you know, the country. And I like how you always and you make it I don't know how to say it, but like I agree with you. I agree with everything you said. I think technology, I like being able to have this call, for example, today. I like being able to take many classes online and just, you know, things, people realizing and being aware that they can do so much online nowadays is good. But I don't personally, I don't think art can be experienced online. I want to be in front of an artwork to be able to really see it and enjoy it. And I want to interact with other creatives in a studio or in a space rather than online. I like how online made our lives a bit easier, but I miss and I can't wait to go back to normal life, inshallah.
Sure.
There's also kind of intimacy to the kind of space that Ahmed was talking about. This notion of sitting next to each other and being able to offer and contribute to each other's practice. I think that's really compelling.
I
And
know.
it's one of the most beautiful things when we can really like nurture and kindle each other's practice in a way, irrespective of what form it takes, whether it's institutional or whether it's individual, whether it's collective.
The reason, sorry, Basma, I know we're going back to a question that was previously asked, but the reason why I'm saying this is because for us at Mashtal, it was a double-edged sword. It was beautiful because suddenly you have this unlimited reach, and you know, digital solutions. When you're establishing community, you first think of a physical space, and it was something that we were planning on doing next, you know, and COVID sort of pushed that into speed limits. And the challenge though was monetizing. So how can you really translate that to sustainability? You know, building a business model as a creative space, and it's all about this community engagement and interactivity and all that stuff. But how can you translate the online to a monetized tool? I think this is where the challenge was, especially when you have entities that are providing everything that you can be providing, but free of charge. So you can't even charge for the classes or workshops or engagements that are being hosted in your platform. So this was, I think, one of the biggest challenges for moving towards an online approach in sustainability.
There is a question for Wضحى. I don't know if she's still with us. Or Wضحى, there is a question coming from the audience talking about, at this time, even the experts can't say for sure what the future creative space will look like. Many artists and designers assume that increased flexibility to work from their home or outdoors after the pandemic will have creative spaces work in much smaller spaces. It may seem counterintuitive, but that approach may not actually be the safest. I guess the question would look like, I think more and more increasingly with the pandemic, we're becoming more locally focused. Yeah. And how sustainable would like a local or smaller circle look like in the future, assuming that eventually we go back to normal, whatever that normal is?
I think it's kind of forcing us to create something that's not there. So yes, it is kind of focusing on the local or smaller circle, but we are trying to go broader. I think honestly, a good example that I really enjoyed was when we created a unique experience in Eid. We were in the midst of the lockdown, and then we had to think outside of the box and then figure out a way how can we kind of bridge that gap between people being at home, but also we want to create that experience. So we were able to create something where we went to people in their homes. We created this parade that traveled in the city. So I think that was something, things like that are the experiences we need to find and create in order to bridge this gap. I think there was a second part to the question.
So creative spaces can be intimidating. How are you trying to reach out to the general society, the public, to make it accessible without it being intimidating?
So I work in a very intimidating building. It's a beautiful building, and people get scared of entering it. So a way we were able to kind of avoid that is to create an experience where we would start with something that is very inspirational at a smaller level. We go to everyone. We even go to students, and then we take you to those levels where you develop and grow with our programs. And I think that's something very important. You start with everyone, you do an open call for everyone, and then handpick and develop the people who are right for whichever program it is.
There is another thing, actually. We saw it in the Medina Arts Center. We create different, or we open our doors while there are other activities happening in the area where people can actually see that our doors are open. So basically they will just have to jump in and pitch in and be part of this community. So that is something that is, in a sense, giving or having a bite, and the other audience from other activities will come in easily. There is another thing that we are asking other platforms like جمعية التطوع or any other جمعيات to have and host their activities in our center, so people will come actually and see that is not intimidating space and be part of it in a sense. Yeah. So I think that's one of them.
So we are running out of time, but before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask one final question to everyone. And obviously you dream of these initiatives, creative spaces, and you can't control what people take out from that initiative or space. But what are 3 things you want the next generation to know or take from your initiative once they interact with it?
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, sure. As a wrap up and final question, what are the things that you want people to know from your initiative? Or what are the things you want them to know once they interact with your initiative?
I can maybe start. What I want to tell the creative talent is come to ITRA, be part of Tanween, attend a workshop, come have a chat with us. I think the time is now for you to be creative, and let us help you get there.
I can go next if that helps. I think it could be really useful for people to slow down and sort of like really deep thinking, slow thinking, look at long-term research-based sort of efforts, and then trying to sort of, in a way, just listen to the ground, find inspiration outside of the usual suspects and the usual places that we turn to, from community, from as Ahmed said, neighborhoods, and then the people around us. That'd be lovely. And then it's sort of the responsibility for the rest of us to just give access to the resources and infrastructure to make those things possible.
I agree, Rahul. Slowing down and doing some more research, that will be something really we can have or help this next generation to understand. We have this too much rush to exhibit to and to see and to attend, but slowing down and producing something with better quality might be something really interesting to deliver.
I want to say something. When I hear, as a mother, when I hear next generation, anything about, I immediately think of my kids. As a mother, I'm constantly thinking of these kind of questions. I always want to create the best experiences for my children. So I honestly feel that I carry that same sense of responsibility as I plan my program. We always try to include children's workshops, exhibitions. We always invite students from different schools to and offer guided tours. We also have kids' art books in our library. I think it's really important to have the kids in these kind of spaces. Let them listen to what they have to say. Let them meet the artists, ask their questions. Let them realize the value of their thoughts and contribution and just their input. And I think that's really important while being in a relaxed and a creative environment. It's not, I think it's just involving them in as many as we can, activities as we can.
Just to add to what everybody says, I feel like the value needs to be communicated to them about how important it is to support local artists and support local creatives financially. Like, I think it's something that we don't have as a community, that we don't buy local art and we don't buy local designers, and we don't, it's a very small percentage of the community that actually does that. And I think you can find things in all the different kinds of price brackets that you'll love and that you will keep for the rest of your life. So I think that's a very important thing for the next generation to kind of cultivate, is this kind of mentality of like, okay, if I want to keep seeing this, then I need to support it, and more than just attending.
No, I agree with you. I feel like, sorry.
No, go.
I feel like for one of the things is to produce locally as well, and not just buy locally, but also try and see what are the options locally as a creative that you can use, who are the people that you can work with. Kind of realizing that we don't have to import talent. We have talent here, and we need to be aware of that.
From our end, I think the three things would be, firstly, you need a whole community that's not just made up of stars. So knowing that each one matters, you know, the marketeer who's setting up the window display for the fashion designer is as important as the fashion designer. And also explore, not to be afraid. There's, I think, a lot of fear when it comes to the creative process and the creative journey, and also use these spaces the best you can because they're made for you.
Ahmed, I think you're on.
Oh, okay, now I can hear. I think for the next generation, inshallah, and to think, I'll take it from, again, personal experience. Now we have creative spaces, and now there is more creative spaces, and inshallah you'll find a creative space around you or somewhere. But I want to really encourage them to start within their own space. Each person, each individual have their own creative space, whether in their home, whether in their room, whether in the space in their mind. I mean, the corona, when it happens, it gives us the lockdown, and it gives us a bit of pause. And you know that button you press in the recorder of that pause button, we had that. And everybody was restricted within their own space to create something, to be creative, or to invest in time. And people start even being creative in cooking and other talents, whatever they, just because they are within their own space. So I really encourage you that you still have that. Inshallah, we'll go back to normal, but it gives us something new. It gives us something to appreciate time and to appreciate whatever we have around us, and to be creative around what we have access to, and what is matter close to us, to our health, our family. And I hope that we can move with that and venture more from that and within the space that we have. So everybody have their own creative space. Just give it a bit of time and chance. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for your time and for your insights and for being part of this panel. It's been great. And thank you, Misk Art Week, for having us. And we'll see everyone soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.